I suppose this game is finished now. She was feeling quite gloomy when someone suddenly opened the door to the theatre. Footsteps echoed as a man, who looked very self-important and was in late middle age, ran into the building. He moved quickly, dodging the guards who tried to stop him at the entrance. "Dr. Kan," he shouted. "Is Dr. Kan here?" The yelling was not very polite, but Maomao saw two faces she recognized behind the newcomer. Or rather, it was the same face appearing twice. "I know them." They were two of the three brothers she had helped investigate. Her father, who was sitting on a chair beside the stage, stood up. "What's the matter?" He leaned on his cane and began to move forward. The newcomers evidently felt he wasn't moving quickly enough. They pushed through the crowd to meet him in the middle. Maomao wanted to go over to him, but she stopped when she saw the soldiers standing nearby. "This is your fault," said one of them. "My son." "My son," Liu Humin said. "I'm afraid I don't understand. What has happened?" It was true that the man was missing one of his sons. What had happened to the third boy? The man placed something wrapped in cloth on the table. Then he opened it to reveal two human fingers. The crowd started screaming. The man was still yelling. He ordered them to find his son. He said if the son died, he would hold them responsible. Chapter 18. The Fingers. Owner. The enraged interloper was the father of the notorious triplets. His name was Bowen. The characters in his name meant something like the cultured specialist, but he was far from the calm, composed person his name suggested. His angry speech was so disruptive that the competitors had to stop their game. Bowen seemed aware of Jinshi and the unusual man, but he thought his own situation was more important. "Are these your son's fingers?" Liu Humen asked. The audience had been sent home after all the commotion, and now only the event staff were left. Maomao could not imagine the unusual man would normally have tolerated such an interruption to his game. Perhaps he was truly feeling unwell. At some point he had fallen asleep with his face on the board. His aide was currently tending to him in a corner of the theatre. The aide looked at Maomao as if begging her to come and look after the strategist in her father's place. She gave him a glare that kept him quiet. Enen and Yao took over caring for the strategist. It was debatable whether they were involved in the event or not, but they were there nonetheless. Unfortunately, that meant Maomao could not slip away either. Yao looked as though she might swoon at the sight of the fingers on the table. She was becoming accustomed to treating injuries, but severed pieces were still difficult for her. The interruption and the condition the freak was in meant the conclusion of the game would probably be postponed. Lahan said to Jinshi, "Do not worry, I recorded the state of the board. We will continue when things have calmed down somewhat." Jinshi did not look entirely comfortable with that. He had been on the cusp of victory, even if he had been forced to exploit his looks and do every merciless thing he could to get there. Then again, even the freak probably cannot come back from a deficit like that. Lahan seemed to be angling for his honored father to lose. He would sell his father and grandfather, so what was one adoptive parent to him if the price was right? Maybe I should look into this, Maomao thought, but no. It seemed likely to be a very long story. She was more concerned with Bowen, who was still laying into her father. His own sons were restraining him. "Perhaps you could explain what exactly is going on," Jinshi said. The three intruders were clearly out of place. If Bowen was going to become violent, he could hardly be surprised if someone held him back. Jinshi was sitting at the board and had been interrupted by this turn of events. His game was failing and he looked like he was struggling to understand it. "Let's hear it," he said. "You may as well have thrown a bucket of cold water on me. Do you have a good reason?" There was an uncharacteristic tremor of anger in his voice. It was hard to blame him after all the preparation he had done. Despite his own fury, Bowen retained enough of his faculties not to defy Jinshi. He was struggling to speak, so one of his sons spoke up from behind him. "We can't find my older brother. We can't find Erji." Erji is what they called their second brother, the middle of the three sons. He had recently been accused of assaulting a young woman. Since this man spoke of the second son as his older brother, he must have been the youngest son. He said no one has seen him for 3 days. And then this morning this package arrived at the house. The other son, who by process of elimination must have been the eldest, spoke next. He opened the package once more. The fingers belonged to a grown man, the absent second son, if their suggestion was correct. The oldest son had a red scratch on his palm. Had he been hurt? Let me inspect those, Liu Humin said. Who the hell are you? Bowen demanded, but Jinchi growled, shut up and let him look. He gave Bowen a glare that silenced him. Maomao wasn't precisely involved, but she knew the circumstances. The same was true of Yao and Nen. However, someone else was there as well. I'm not sure about letting him stay. It was the so-called Go Sage who had been observing Jinchi's game. He sat in his chair looking supremely disinterested. He seemed very distant from everything happening. Bowen and his sons did not say anything to him. They likely had many things they wanted to express. However, with Jinchi watching, they knew they had to control themselves and explain what happened. Bowen took a deep breath and began the story. Thanks to you, my son was arrested. Furthermore, people came forward with accusations about things he had supposedly done to them in the past. Well, whose fault was that? The two remaining sons each looked away. No doubt they had endeavored to pin some of their own wrongdoings on the middle son. Bowen should take his complaints to the freak strategist. He was the one who had dragged Maomao's old man into this situation. Or perhaps he had wanted to but lost his nerve. Then he decided to take it out on Liu Humen instead. Personally, I would be a lot more scared of picking a fight with my old man. Bowen was a father worried for his son, but all this paternal anxiety had come a little late. He had always excused and protected his boys from the consequences of their debauchery. Had he not realized the lesson he was teaching them? And you think one of them abducted him? Liu Humen asked. What else could it be? Bowen demanded, pounding the table. Do you have any idea who might have done it? How should I know? Is it my job to watch my son every single minute? Maomao thought perhaps it should be. She looked at the fingers. The severed ends were already turning black. They might have been reattached if they were still fresh. Then again, she wondered if they had been cut off after their owner died. She had heard that a human body behaved differently when it was butchered, depending on whether the person was alive or dead. She assumed her father could tell. She thought his mournful expression as he looked at the fingers told the story. There was something else as well. The nails had changed color. The nail bed had taken on a blue-black cast. Quietly, Maomao tugged on Yao's and Nen's sleeves. What is it? Yao asked. I just thought maybe we should at least serve tea. Help me out. Oh, good idea. They did not really need 3 people to make tea, but Maomao knew that if she asked Yao, Nen would inevitably come along. And if she asked Nen, Yao would pout at being left out. So 3 people it was. Do we even have tea? I just remember a lot of ginger water, Yao said. We have some, but I think something a bit higher quality is called for, Nen said with a glance at Jinchi. She knew who he was, so she wouldn't serve anything less than what was fitting. She did not have any special affection for him, but she was a capable lady of the court and showed the proper respect. Yao asked, looking at Jinchi, is he going to stay here? Nen said, he has a hobby of sticking his nose into random matters, so I think we are stuck with him. She truly was merciless. Even as Maomao thought that was a callous thing to say, she remembered the many times she had made similar remarks. We have plenty of juice. Carafes full, all for Master Lacan. I'm not sure they are meant for any of the players or spectators, though. Juice, Maomao scratched her chin. That might be perfect, actually. Any grape juice? Yes, I think so. Probably good stuff too. It was in a lovely glass bottle, said Nen, peeking behind the stage. Let's go with that then. Maomao went to the backstage green room. Should we ask for permission first, said Yao. You said he has plenty. He will not miss a single bottle, especially since he is sleeping. Well, if Maomao says it is all right, I think we can trust her, said Nen. With her agreement, they began searching through the many gifts and goodies for their chosen drink. When they returned with a cup for each person, they found the discussion continuing to go nowhere. Bowen was still yelling, and Liu Humen was still listening silently. Jinchi did not appear to be doing anything at all. He was just sitting there, but the way he played absently with the bowl of go stones suggested he was thinking about his next move. The go sage continued to wear an inscrutable expression. Maomao still did not know why he was there. Lahan was there as well, but he was busy trying to finish up from the tournament. He was not only cleaning the venue but also trying to figure out what to write to those who had reserved teaching games with the strategist. They had already paid for the privilege. Here you are. Yao and Nen were passing out the drinks. Is this alcohol? Lahan asked, sounding suspicious. He then gave the drink an exploratory sniff and realized it was just juice. He could not hold his liquor any better than the freak strategist. The cups they used were really for wine, so he wondered about that. NN went over to give a cup to Bowen's eldest son. Then, the next thing they all knew, the cup was flying through the air. Red liquid splattered everywhere. The metal cup rattled as it hit the ground. "Brother," said the youngest son, his face showing pain. NN didn't even flinch, even though she was now drenched with juice. Maomao thought it was good that it was Yao. The idea of what NN would have done was fearsome to contemplate. She would not have remained as calm as she was now. She certainly would not have placed the young mistress near a known womanizer to begin with. "Please pardon me," she said smoothly. "I did not realize it would not be to your liking." She began to clean up the area. Maomao gave cups to Bowen and his other son, making sure to do it deliberately. She thought to herself as she did so that the wrinkles in her father's face had grown deeper. His brow drooped sadly. He would never fail to notice something that had occurred to her. Liuhumin exhaled quietly and then stood up from his chair. "Do you dislike grape wine so much?" he asked the eldest son. "No," the man replied, though it took him a moment to answer. He sounded uncomfortable. Bowen said, "I know it's your favorite." He gave him a curious look, then continued, "But that is not important now. Find my son, or else there's no need for threats. I already know where your son is." Liuhumin shook his head and looked up. "Where? Tell me. The boy you've lost is your second son." "Yes, that's right." Even Maomao began to feel her mood growing heavier. Bowen was making a great deal of fuss, and he truly believed his child was missing. However, he was failing to understand one crucial thing. He could not actually tell his own sons apart. Liuhumin pointed at the eldest son, the one who had slapped the wine cup away. "You had best come clean now. How long do you think you can carry on pretending to be your older brother before someone notices?" Both of the remaining brothers paled. Maomao searched her memories. It had been a little more than a month ago that they had interviewed the three brothers. She had been busy writing things down, but she remembered that the eldest brother's complexion had been poor. She also recalled that he occasionally twitched, reflexively clenching and unclenching his fist. She hadn't given it much thought at the time. She had simply assumed he was in ill health. "What is going on here?" Bowen looked at his boys, genuinely uncomprehending. "It was your eldest son who disappeared." Liuhumin said, "I think you should ask these two for the details. That's preposterous. Do you think you can get out of this by talking nonsense?" He rose and made to grab Maomao's father, but a soldier intervened and stopped him. "He's right. What you're saying is ridiculous," shouted the youngest son, though his face was twitching. Before she could stop herself, Maomao stepped forward. "Far from it, it is the truth, as you both know better than anyone." Then she thought, "Shit, now I have done it," and tried to take half a step back. "Perhaps you could explain what you are both talking about so that even one with my limited understanding can grasp it," said Jinshi, finally rejoining the conversation. Beside him, the ghost sage nodded. Jinshi had probably figured nothing would get resolved without his intervention. Certainly it made everyone stop and collect themselves. "My profound apologies," Bowen said. "I never expected you to be here, Moon Prince." He continued, "Well, I am here, and you have interrupted my game." "Very well. The best thing for my curiosity right now is to find out exactly what is going on. I understand what you are trying to say, but I need you to be quiet for a moment. This conversation isn't getting anywhere like this, and you two behind him don't get any ideas about slipping away." Jinshi was very clear on that point. "Liuhumin, if you find yourself hesitant to speak, perhaps you would allow your apprentice to do so. She is quite capable, and I believe she has arrived at the solution." Maomao could not believe what she was hearing. Jinshi added, "And as a good teacher, you will of course correct her answers if she is mistaken." Maomao's old man gave her a look that communicated she did not have to do anything she didn't want to. "I could just leave this to him." But her father was also a kind man, perhaps too kind. He often felt great sympathy for the suspects, even if they were quite worthless brothers. Liuhumin was quick-witted and might discover a mitigating circumstance that Maomao hadn't considered. This circumstance could excuse the brothers for what they had done. Or perhaps he would simply refuse to tell Bowen the truth. He had done so in the case of the Cheyenne's shrine maiden. Maomao stepped forward. "Very well. Pondering where to begin, she turned and looked at the fingers. Their owner was already dead. It is not certain whether the cause was natural or murder, but perhaps that is where we should begin. She said, I would like to draw your attention to the fingernails. They were discolored and several white lines were visible. Severed fingers are not a pleasant thing to contemplate, even for adults. Yao looked agonized, but she did look. The nails' coloration indicates contact with poison, Maomao continued. Arsenic or lead most likely, just like the owner of the makeup shop. Lead, Maomao repeated and looked at Bowen. Your eldest son had a penchant for grape wine, yes. Yes. I can't deny it, Bowen said. And might I speculate that his tastes tended to be cheap? She thought back to the notes she had taken at her father's request. The oldest son had spoken of going somewhere inexpensive to drink. There was lots of cheap, delicious wine making the rounds of the city just then. Maomao had hoped to taste it herself, but sadly she hadn't been able to. If she had taken a sip when she had the chance, she might have put the pieces together. Grape wine grew bitter if it was stored for too long. The same fermentation process that created alcohol would eventually produce vinegar if allowed to continue. Wine brought from far away, over long distances and long times, could turn sour. However, the wine available in the markets was sweet. Maomao looked at Jinchi. Wine mixed with lead becomes sweet, yes, he said. That's right, sir. He clearly remembered their conversation. From this point, Maomao would have to speculate. Her father wouldn't be pleased, but she didn't think he would contradict her. Over the last several months, caravans had been bringing copious amounts of grape wine from the west. With such large quantities, some of it was bound to have gone bad. What are you getting at? Just tell me the point, Bowen said. I thought I told you to be quiet, Jinchi snapped. Maomao did not want to jump straight to her conclusion. She wanted to explain how she had reached it. The bad stuff would be bitter and unsaleable. The dealers who bought it cheaply would try to find a way to move the product. And what if there happened to be a ready supply of something that would make the alcohol sweet? Maomao looked at her audience. Her father knew the answer, but he chose not to say anything. Enen probably saw what Maomao was getting at as well. She was busy studying Yao, who was deep in thought. Jinchi responded, We are ahead of that problem. The dealers who used the makeup powder to sweeten their wine have been arrested. The only supply left should be what made it to market before their arrest. Prompt work, sir. He issued the ban, so of course he connected the dots. By mixing the lead into the wine became sweeter. Merchants could combine two things that they could not sell to make something they could. This was cheap, tasty wine that delighted customers. Customers might have been less pleased if they had realized they were being poisoned. If they drank enough of it, the poison would begin to show in their fingernails. Maomao had seen the eldest son, and he had seemed out of sorts. If he continued drinking it after that, things could only have gotten worse. The middle son, meanwhile, had been the picture of health. As far as Maomao remembered, his fingers had shown no signs of drinking the poisonous wine. Even if her recollection wasn't quite perfect, her old man certainly would have remembered. Human fingernails grow at a rate of roughly 3 millimeters a month. When I recorded his testimony, this young man's fingernails must already have been showing those white streaks, Maomao said. She looked at her father. He looked uneasy but spoke nonetheless. He said, One of the 3 young men we spoke to hid his fingers. The others showed no irregularities with their fingers or nails. Jinchi asked, Was there something irregular about the second son's fingers? Liuhumen replied no. Therefore, we can at least conclude the severed fingers do not belong to him. He said this unequivocally. He was certain about the fingers. Your eldest son seems to have been in considerable ill health these past months. My understanding is that he was frequently absent from work. Lahan said this, and it seemed he had looked into the soldiers' backgrounds at some point. It is always possible the fingers belong to some entirely unrelated individual. Maomao continued, looking at the 2 men who shared his face. But given the circumstances, I think it is reasonable to suppose that they are your elder brothers. She then asked, perhaps someone mistook him for the second son and kidnapped him. In which case, why not simply tell them that they had the wrong man? She gave them an exaggerated expression of puzzlement. The 2 men said nothing but looked at each other while avoiding Maomao's gaze. Are you ready to admit that you are behind this? She said at length. Them, you think they did this? Bowen exclaimed. At least he was easy to read. He said, I do, which raises the question, what did they stand to gain from staging such a spectacle? Perhaps it has something to do with their involvement in their own brother's death. At that, everyone started talking at once. Liu Hemen was the only quiet one, looking gravely at the remaining two triplets. What are you talking about? You're not making any sense, said the alleged eldest son, probably the middle boy in reality. He was trying to feign ignorance because he knew that if he admitted Maomao was right, it would all be over.